Hi everyone, I'm George Swift from Bigger, Brighter, Bolder, and I'm here to talk to you today about potential versus possibility. And I'm going to take you through a number of key stages. First of all, I'm going to share with you my definitions of the two things and how I think they differentiate from each other. I'm then going to talk you through the problem that we face in increasing our performance in any area of our life or our life in general. I'm then going to share with you or go through an exercise with you that you're going to participate in, which is a simple exercise, but it shows you really clearly how you can take steps to break through any self-imposed limitations that you might have. After that, I'm then going to tell you exactly why you're not going to do it and why it's not going to work for you, and then I'm going to finish by giving you the antidote to that block. So, before I get going, I just want to give you a real brief introduction to me. As I say, George Swift, Bigger, Brighter, Bolder. I'm a mindset performance coach. So, Bigger, Brighter, Bolder is a mindset conditioning company, and what we do is we work with sporting teams, entrepreneurs, and corporates in harnessing the right mindset for success and breaking through any limiting beliefs, behaviours, climates, etc. So with corporates, I tend to work with senior executives and senior management team in creating this solid steel core that then emanates out throughout the business. Entrepreneurs we work with through something which I created called Success Groups, which is a mastermind mindset group. And again, it's all about creating the right mindset for creating success and ultimately, obviously, the life that we're looking to achieve. And then with sporting teams, it's all about bringing that performance together, building strong teams, and then sending them out on their way to go and win. So today is a subject very close to my heart, potential versus possibility. I say close to my heart because for a long part of my life, I always thought I should have more, and I always thought I could have more, and deep down, I always suspected, that I was pretty great, right? I'm sure you do too. However, I spent most of my life being massively frustrated because it never materialised, it never got realised. And it took me a long time, really, I suppose, to take, responsibility for that, but also in understanding exactly what was going on. What was the mechanical process in me, right? I used to think it was me, and I used to think I was kidding myself or lying to myself. I used to sit there and think, the whole world of personal development will tell you can achieve anything. I bought into that, but it didn't really change my life massively until I really started uncovering what I believe are the real secrets to, the blocks behind why we don't do what we should do and why we do achieve things that we do achieve, etc. So first of all, the difference between potential and possibility for me is this. Potential is your inherent potential. It's your physical, mental, maximum potential that you could achieve without any limitation, without any blocks, and if you were to give something, 100% of everything you had. That's your maximum potential, okay? Possibility, however, is our own self-limiting beliefs, okay? It's our inherent limiting beliefs. It's what we learn. We learnt it initially from, our family environments, and then it's from, culturally, and then maybe from some experiences we had, etc. But basically, we learnt this, we put it in place. Your possibility is limited, okay, to what you believe is possible, and it's not the same thing as what is your potential. So when we look at this graph here, at the bottom you've got minimum, okay? That's the minimum that's out there in the world for anybody, okay? The maximum is the most that anyone's ever achieved in any particular given area of your life. So I want you to think about an area of your life that you'd like to create change in, or an area of your life you would like better results in, or whatever it might be, and hold that in your mind for the rest of the talk, and we'll give you an opportunity to work on it in a few moments. So you've got the minimum and the maximum there that's available out there in the world. I believe where our potential lies is very much up with the maximum that's available out there, okay? Now, there's always some smart arse out there now at this point that would normally put their hand up and start talking about genetics and stuff like that. Now, I'm well aware that the science community is desperately trying to find gene codes that show why we're so rubbish or why some of us are so great, okay? The truth of the matter is, there may or may not be a genetic factor involved in this. If there is a genetic factor in this, I'm going to tell you now, it's a very small one. It's a very small one, okay? So with that in mind, I'm going to be mean to you and say that your potential in the chosen area of your life you want this growth in is 80 to 90%. I personally believe it's a lot higher than that, and I work on the assumption that, the potential is unlimited, and there's no reason why anyone couldn't go and bust that maximum bar completely. However, I don't want to start on the wrong foot with people. I am aware that genetic scientists are kind of finding little things now that maybe start to indicate that certain people learn faster, etc., down to genetics, okay? So let's say you've got an 85, 90% chance there of, your potential is 85 to 95% of the maximum that's out there in the world. Your possibility, however, is set normally much, much lower. Much, much lower. Now, no matter how successful you think you are, I can tell you now, you're nowhere near as successful as you could be. Now, I don't mean to be mean or harsh or anything else. It's simply a fact. There is nothing really different in you than the people out there that within this area of life you'd like more of that have everything. Okay? There's nothing massively different between these people. So we're setting our possibility much, much lower than actually what our ultimate potential could be. And we learnt this initially, as I say, through our home environments, etc. But there's three ways that we learn as a human species. The first one is through direct experience. So, as we evolved as a species, whatever it is, and all animals have this, of course, as we evolved, what happened was, something bad happened to us, we learnt from it so we could avoid it in future. As something good happened to us, we learnt from that so we could go more towards that in the future, and we could become safer, and we could avoid danger. We could have basically a safer life and a longer life. So then we develop the ability to learn through witnessed experience, okay? So what that means is we see something happening to someone else, we get a response, so we then get an emotional response, which we learn from, okay? So if I see something awful happening here, like someone getting their arm chewed off with by a saber-toothed tiger, that's a brilliant solution to this problem, right? Because now I don't have to actually have the experience in order to learn from that experience that someone else had. Because let's be honest, the chance of this guy surviving this arm being ripped off out in caveman times is really unlikely. So it's all very well him learning from it, but he's probably got about 10 minutes to apply that learning. However, the two onlookers that are getting the same hit, give or take, can then take that learning for themselves, and they can have all that learning so in the future they know to avoid saber-toothed tigers. The third way we learn is through taught experience. We don't have to even be present anymore to that experience. We can be told that experience, showed that experience, taught that experience, and we can still get an amount of that experience that we need in order for our brain to also learn from that event. So now we don't even have to be anywhere near danger in order to learn from that danger and avoid it in the future. This is brilliant, okay, for survival. It's brilliant in terms of evolution as a species. However, it's massively flawed when we start looking at things like human beings and our possibility and our potential and the limitations that we put in place. Because these learnings, they're not just about bad things and good things. They're also about who am I, where do I fit in, what can I expect out of life, what's a good thing to have, what's the right amount of money to have, what's a wrong amount of money to have, what's greedy, and what counts as successful, what counts as a failure. All these things are also learned. So when we apply the two things together, we start to get this tear, this frustration. We want more, but equally, we're sort of held back. So how this really plays out in the brain is a diagram I've shown you there, quite flippantly I've shown you. You've got the brain stem there, and at the top of that you've got your survival instincts, okay? So some people call this reptilian brain, reptilian mind, or the lizard brain. And this is where all your primitive survival instincts come from. Outside of that, you've got your limbic brain, the emotional brain. This is where you hold your emotional responses. So, you've got the primitive ones such as fear. And then obviously you've got more developed ones, okay? Like love and compassion and all these other kind of emotional responses. Then outside of that, we've got what I very, very flippantly call the EastEnders brain. Why do I call it EastEnders brain? Because this is the most powerful part of what makes us a human being, okay? It's where all our problem solving is, all our language is, all our creative thinking. And yet most of us turn around and basically it's sitting there. He said, she said, they said, he said, does my arse look big in this, right? So we waste all that power in drama, okay? So I call it the EastEnders brain. And the way it works is this. Once we've learned these patterns, okay, from the outside world, whether it be direct, witnessed or taught experience, a pattern starts to unfold outside of us. We start to see a pattern unfolding outside of us, and then it goes into our brain. We make an assessment, a judgment on that, okay? Once we make an assessment, a judgment, i.e. we recognise it to be this. In this case, I've done it as a threat. So we recognise this threat. It goes into the subconscious. The subconscious then goes out, triggers a chemical release. In this case, fear, okay, adrenaline and so forth, that manipulate us into taking very specific actions. In this case, obviously, fight or flight. Now, it doesn't have to be a warning. This could be something we desire. So the pattern starts to unfold outside of us as something that we perceive is good for us. Once we make that judgment on it, it goes into subconscious. The subconscious, through millions of years of evolution, knows exactly what to do with that, and it floods us with another chemical. Okay, it could be excitement or desire or lust or something else. Chemicals to manipulate us to move towards this thing because it's good for us. When the whole thing comes together, this response system, it's what I call the emotional mindset. So at the top of this emotional mindset stack, we've got identity, okay? And it's your core identity. Now, if I asked you, who are you? The chances are the first thing you're going to tell me is your name. And if I said, tell me about yourself, the chances are the first thing you're going to tell me is about your name. Why? Because we put massive importance on that in society, but also because it was probably the first thing that you were ever taught. And that's important. It was the first thing that you were ever taught. So picture the scene. Mum, Dad, beautiful little newborn baby. Dad turns around and says, I like the name Trevor. Mum turns around and says, I had an uncle Trevor, didn't get on too well. How about Simon? Dad says, I had a Simon at school. He wasn't a nice kid. I think, no. But I do like Bernard. And your mum says, Bernard? Oh my God, Bernard. No. So then Mum turns around and says, what about Harry? And then Dad turns around and says, Harry. I like Harry. Mum says, I like Harry. So they say, okay, let's call it Harry. And in that moment, they named a baby Harry. And in the ensuing days and weeks and months, two things happened. They trained themselves, okay? They taught themselves that the baby was Harry, and they taught the baby that it was Harry. And as you teach something on and on and on, it becomes so ingrained that it becomes conditioned in the brain so that it just is Harry. And Harry is Harry, and to the parents, Harry is Harry, and to everyone else in the family, Harry is Harry. But what it was two people coming together, compromising the best they could based on the experiences they had had in their own life. Now get this. Everything else in your life is just as intangible. Just as intangible. It's made up. It's a number of people passing on their experiences the best they can, given who they are. Most of what they're teaching and passing on, they didn't even experience themselves. It's what they were taught and passed on. And you know what? They might not even been taught it, per se. But I tell you now, if you grew up in an environment, then you're witnessing it, and also you're experiencing it directly, and that's how we learn. Quick story I always tell about myself to give you an idea of just how intangible this thing is. I am George Douglas Swift. I believe so deeply I'm George Douglas Swift. It's everything that George Douglas Swift stands for, and everything else is wrapped up in that name. Now, the way my name came about was my mum and dad were talking about different names. My mum quite liked Mark and quite liked Andrew. My dad just flippantly put it out there and said, well, we could call him George after your dad, right? My mum's dad. My mum kind of went, maybe. That was it, as far as she went, okay? But if you knew my dad, you know exactly what he's like. He would go straight out there and say, right, that's what it is, and his name's George. He just thought the decision was made, like he does most things similar to that. And he went out and told my mum's mum that they were thinking, or not thinking, that they were going to call me George after her husband. She was blown away and so happy. Obviously, my granddad called George was blown away and so happy. Everyone was so happy, apart from my nan on my dad's side, who seemed to have got forgotten in this, whose husband had died in the Second World War. In a quick turnaround and an appeasement to my nan, they then turn around and say, yeah, but we're going to call him Douglas as a middle name after your husband. Made up in the moment, okay? And Swift was a name that no one even thought about, no one had a choice in it. So this thing that I think, I grew up believing so strongly who George Douglas Swift was a slip up from my dad, an appeasement to my nan and something that nobody thought they had a choice in. Everything else in my life is exactly the same. Nothing else that I learned from that environment was any different. And it's quite mind-blowing when you get your head around this. Because we believe so strongly that it becomes our core identity. And this is where this self-imposed limitation really starts from. It's all very well looking at the next level, which is beliefs, because identity creates our beliefs, and our beliefs create identity. And I'm sure if you've ever done any kind of work with personal development or coaches, they'll look at your beliefs, etc. I'm going to tell you now, your beliefs aren't the problem, okay? The real problem here is right deep down in your identity. And I tell you now, that's where serious work needs to be done to filter it out through your system. And it's not easy because it's the hardest part of you. So I always say, if your identity is granite, like solid rock, your beliefs are kind of dormant, and then your beliefs give rise to your thoughts, and your thoughts are kind of dynamic. And you'll hear a lot of work in coaching and stuff where they'll talk to you about catching your thoughts, looking at your thoughts, working with your thoughts. Because you know what, that's one of the best places to get involved, Because when you catch your thoughts, you can start seeing who you think you are and what your views are of the world. And you have to catch them because they're flying through, a million miles an hour. And most of these thoughts you're not even aware you're having, but they're massively dictating what you get out of life. Because all thoughts give rise to feelings. They trigger feelings. Feelings are just chemicals, okay? I've shown you in the brain. It's just chemical responses made to manipulate you to take certain actions. We all know that all actions have a reaction, and then we observe those reactions, and we make that reality. We perceive it as reality, and it feeds back into our identity and our beliefs. So we've got a self-perpetuating cycle. Can we see that? And this is a pattern. And you've got many of these, by the way, okay? You've got many of these patterns, right? And they're running all the time like computer programs. And what they're doing is they're keeping everything in equilibrium. Because I tell you now, you guys have done immensely well out of life. As far as the brain is concerned, as far as evolution is concerned, we are thriving beyond anything else on this planet. So why would you mess with that? If you've got to 30, 40, 50 years old, you've had your kids, you've got your house, you've got your security, you've got your shelter, your warmth, your safety, what else? What else does the archaic brain want out of life? You're thriving. So these things are in place to keep you safe. But what they also do is they massively limit us, because if you believe that a certain amount of money is too much money, then that perpetuates through, and it's going to limit the amount of money that you want, believe it or not, that you're desired for, but also that you're allowed to have and everything else. And your other ones here all manipulating in, because equal to this, even if you do want more, because the outside world then teaches us we want more, but we've got these cycles inside where we learn through our culture or upbringing or family that this was the amount of money that was an acceptable amount of money. So these two things start pulling against each other. Now you've got this disparity between what we kind of want, what we're being chemically manipulated to want, but we're also being chemically manipulated to not have. So this is our problem that we face, okay? The upshot is that Frankenstein was animated by electricity. And he wasn't particularly animated. He had his arms out front and just walked around going, and stuff like that, right? But he was animated by electricity. So if Frankenstein is animated by electricity, then we are animated by chemicals. And it's what I call the chemical puppet. And what we do is chemicals say dance this way, chemicals say dance that way. And it's the coming together of evolutionary responses, fear, love, desire, all those sort of things, learnt into an environment which was initially your house that you were born in, and then greater into the environment, including TV and everything else, which all became part of your experience, direct, witnessed and taught. And the two things come together and they say dance this way, dance that way, do this, don't do that. And what we do is we get all these feelings, and we are absolutely at the mercy of these chemicals until we get involved. And the only way of creating change in our life is we have to do things differently, because these patterns are creating the same actions over and over again. So we have to do things differently. It's been well documented. It's not that easy. Why? Because I'm talking about things so deep in you that they're going on so unconsciously you're not even aware what's happening. So we have to consciously start pushing against what's known. And I'm here to tell you now, this isn't easy. And I say, like, the personal development world is like the diet industry, which is that hard work doesn't sell. And yet it's the only thing that's ever been proven to create real success. If you read an autobiography or you hear anyone talking about their success, I'm talking about people that have achieved what I'm talking about up there near towards their potential, okay? They've never done it easy. They've never said, I was born gifted and then it just happened. I've never read an autobiography. I've never seen anything like that's ever happened. The bottom line is, even if they did have some kind of inherent ability, they nurtured the hell out of that ability and they worked hard, and quite often you'll hear them say how they worked harder than anybody else. To create real success in life is going to take a bit of effort, some discipline, and some hard work, because to get from where you are now to where you want to be, you're going to have to push against the known, and the known is going to resist you, and it's all inside. It's all in you. It's these cycles inside you, but they're strong. They've been around for millions and millions of years, okay, these mechanisms to keep you safe. So you start going off on a tangent, they're going to resist you to some extent. Now, you can make life easy for yourself, okay? I'm telling you now, if you get a good coach and stuff like this, and really get an understanding of what's going on in your brain and whatever, like I talk about to people all day long, then I tell you now, it does become easier because you can break those mechanisms down a little bit easier. But the bottom line is you're still going to get, to some extent, resistance, and you're going to have to keep applying the pressure consistently, and you have to persist with that, because these mechanisms are very strong, and given half a chance, they will snap you back, okay? So I want to take you through an exercise. It's about time, I suppose, you did some work. Bring in an area of your life, please, right now, where you would like to create change. So something that either is frustrating you on the sort of negative scale, and you just have had enough of, this thing holding you back or not having what you want in life, or an area of life that's maybe working for you, but you just want the next level, or you'd like the ultimate level, okay? So you would like to start to see actually what might your maximum potential actually be in this area of life. So just choose one now for me very quickly. So grab a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to draw this graph for me. And at the bottom and the top, you've got the minimum and the maximum, okay, just like we had before. In this area of your life, the minimum, I want you to identify what is the minimum that's out there in the world generally. Not for you, okay, we're not getting involved in this process yet. This is just a generic scale. What's the minimum that's out there in the world in this area of life for anybody, okay? So if it's health, you know what, it might be a coma or death, all right? If it's money, it might be £0, or maybe, it might be out on the streets. Whatever, you identify as the minimum that's out there in this area of your life. If it's business, you might be thinking, okay, the minimum is, unemployed, and then we want to identify the maximum. And maybe the maximum in this is being a CEO, or maybe the maximum of this is owning your own huge company. Maybe it's Bill Gates or something. When you identify these things, you can use these as identifiers. You could sit there and put unemployed on the bottom, and at the top you could sit there and put Bill Gates, for example, if that's what the area you're working towards. If it was health, maybe it would be, life support, would be the minimum, because maybe that'd be worse than death, I don't know, or death. And then at the maximum, you might then sit there and say, right, you know what, Olympic athlete, just for example. And then once you've done that, I want you to mark where you are now on that scale, okay? So I've put approximately 50% on my one. Maybe you're lower, maybe you're higher than that. But based on this scale, as you've now drawn it out, where are you in this area of your life right now? What is it you have in this area of your life right now? I want you to identify with that again. It could be some bullet points, a numerical value, an emotional value, just so we know exactly what we're talking about here. Once you've done that, I want you to start to list of stepping stones, if you like, between where you are now and the maximum that's out there, okay? And try and do it in some kind of sequential order if you can, best you can. We're going to, rush this through a little bit here. I normally take, anything from an hour to 90 minutes to go through this fully, okay? Because you can imagine there's probably about 50 or maybe even 100 steps between where you are now and the maximum that's there. But what I want you to do now is to start just plotting. And what I want you to plot isn't so much necessarily, the things that are in the gap. So if it's finances, don't necessarily say, right, 50 grand, 60 grand, 70 grand. That goes without saying, that achievement. So this isn't stepping stones of achievement. What we're looking at here is things like personality traits. We're talking about personal standards, beliefs, behaviours, certain actions. Within this as well, definitely can be some skills that need to be taken on board. Maybe there's, something like you need to employ someone to take part of an area of your life. Maybe you need to get an expert in to work with you. Maybe that's what happens here. As you go towards the higher reaches, you start realizing actually there's only so much you can do, and actually what you need is a partnership. And at that point, you know what? A strong partnership comes together. The world is full of big, successful people that come together over partnerships, So you've got Walt and Roy Disney, you've got Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates and another Steve, I think. And they all come together, okay, these partnering, and that's what explodes the success and goes crazy. Maybe that's what needs to happen. But start listing out as sequentially as you can, okay? What would be the next thing that you would need to develop, enhance? Where would you need to raise your personal standards? Where would you need to put more effort, more focus maybe, more tenacious? These are sorts of things I'm looking at moving forward. So just jot those down for me, guys. You're not going to get 50 to 100 out here now, but if you get 5 or 6, that's going to be absolutely fine to give you the principle of what we're talking about. We could also do this working down, okay? And if I was doing this fully, I would do this working downwards as well. And what you do is you start taking away your current standards and skill sets and attributes and personality traits and beliefs and thoughts and how you view the world. Does that make sense? And we strip those away. And as we strip those away, you know what? We would come down this scale as well, because you're already doing a number of really brilliant things which are getting you the result that you've got right now. And now all you need to do, once you see the scale, is just plot where you want to be. Now, if you're already getting emotionally caught up in this, and emotionally already starting to feel that, the maximum feels like hard work, you start looking at those top 2 or 3 bullet points, if you like, going up those stepping stones, thinking they seem too big, I'm not sure I can do this, or it seems like hard work or too much sacrifice. That is part of this chemical puppet, I'm going to say muppet then, this chemical puppet system that I'm talking about that's manipulating before you've even taken any action. It's manipulating you into not taking action. And it's through learnt behaviour. You learnt this, okay? You learnt it from somewhere. That being said, you can put it wherever you want. Now, I've put mine at 80% because I'm an 80% kind of guy, right? So, I grew up thinking 80% was the benchmark. If you hit 80%, you did brilliant, right? 80% got you A's at your O levels and A levels, 80% got you, first class honours degree, 80% got you a distinction at your master's degree, 80% is really good, really solid. So there you go. That'll do. To compromise between a really good result and the amount of effort you want to put in. So you know what? I've put mine in at 80%. You put yours in exactly where you want to. And now what you've got is you've got the list of things underneath you, if you like, that you're already doing. We haven't done that bit today, but you could. You've got a list of things underneath you that you're already doing that's creating the level of result that you're currently getting in your life. And then you've got a whole list of things between where you are now up to where you would choose to be. And you just have to start doing those consistently. And you have to persist with those as well. And as you take your personal standards and your beliefs and your thought processes and your actions and your skill set and everything else, and as you take it up to that next level, then you're going to start getting the results that that level relates to. And then when you get to that place, don't be surprised that you start looking a little bit higher and think, well, it's just one more step, it's just one more step. And now we start looking at getting even close to hitting our true potential. So there's certain rules to this, what I call success ladder, because it's just runs of a ladder, okay? And there's certain rules to take back control. Number 1, choose your outcome. Number 2, you set your standards. So you set the standards of the person, if you like, that you're going to be, that has what it is that you're looking to have. So standards are things like always do your best, give 100%, never quit, always be positive, always be loving, okay? Maybe it's something personal at home you're working on today. A standard to aim for, a benchmark, if you like, okay, of behaviour and beliefs and ways of being. You then take those standards and you define rules from them, because you already have rules that you stick to, but you don't know their rules because you're already doing them, okay? They're all part of your current level of standards where you are right now. So you've got your current level of standards, and within that there are rules that you obey which keep you to those standards, but you're not aware of them because it's just who you are, it's what you do. If you go up the next level, then it starts becoming unknown, okay? So what we need to do is we need to define those standards, but then we have to absolutely define the rules that make up the standards, because then we can just do a tick and say, yes, we did adhere to that standard. No, we didn't adhere to that standard because we did these set rules. So you have to start defining, okay, what are the rules that mean that that standard has been met? And the difference between a standard and a rule is a standard is very subjective and very personal, and it's a sense and a feeling of doing something. And this is outside your current known, okay, this is outside of your current level of possibility, and we're starting to raise the bar. You need to then define it very clearly so you know you're hitting that standard. Does that make sense? And then the last rule, which is probably one of the most powerful things I'm going to share with you today, if you really get your head around this, and that is you have to accept the rules or change your outcomes. You can't have it both ways. You can't have, do what someone at this level does and have what this person has. It just doesn't work. And I think we were sold a lie in the Western world, right? I think we're still being sold this lie, which is somehow we can have more out of life than we put in. It's never worked. It's never happened in the history, right, ever, that someone's got more out than what they've put in. It doesn't work like that, okay? We have to put in what we need to put in to get the result that we're looking to get. I'm talking about across the whole of your life. Yes, you know what? Some people are born into money, so they have a lot more money than they work for. I'm talking about the overall of life here. I'm talking about hitting your potential in life. You put a certain amount in, you get a certain result out. Once you identify what needs to go in to get the result you want, you have to stick to those rules, and then you'll get that outcome. If you don't stick to the rules, you won't get the outcome, and you have to accept that your expectations need to drop, and that's what you're going to get. And in that is a lot of peace. Because now we're starting to own it and take responsibility for what we have out of life, and we start to take away some of this pressure that we have and this anxiety and frustration and disappointment that maybe we have, this yearning for more. It goes out the window, because now it's no longer this idea, well, I want this, but I'm doing this. Now it's a case of I'm doing this, I expect this, and therefore I'm happy with this because it's a fair trade-off for me and this is what I want. No one says you have to set your bar through the roof. I'm not saying you have to hit your potential. I'm saying the whole point is to take ownership for where you are and what you have, and then once you do that, then you can take ownership for going wherever you want to go with this. Now, I mentioned then that I'm an 80% kind of guy, and I also mentioned that you don't have to, set your bar through the roof, etc. There's one other thing I want to share with you, because there's another reason why in life you might feel you're putting in this much and only getting this much, okay? There's another reason why that's happening. One is, our expectations are higher than what we're putting in. We have to be accountable to ourselves, and we have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to, balance the books. The other way is this: if you really are putting in 80%, but the end result of your life, or the end result of some project, for example, or business, isn't turning out as good as you thought you were, then this is another model to cast your eye over. So this model was something that I used to teach when I used to lecture at university to film students. So I'm going to share it with you as I shared it with them, but apply this area of your life to it, or apply your life in general, or your business in general to this. And I'll explain exactly how you can apply it to, say, a corporate structure in a minute. But basically, they would turn up and they'd have an 80% idea, right? A really solid idea, 80%, right? 80% gets you an A. So they would take this idea and they would develop a script from it. And that script would be, what? An 80% kind of a script, right? Really good execution of that script, of that idea. But they can only do 80% of the idea, which was 80% in the first place. Does this make sense? I think you can see where this is going already. Then they would go out and they would shoot their film 80%. They'd do a really good job of shooting that script. And then they would go out and edit it and do a really good job of editing that script, or editing that film. Then they would go out and do some sound, and then they would put some post-production, whatever it might be, and then they'd package it all up and hand in their work. And if you go through 7 steps of a project like this, where everyone's giving 80%, you're going to end up with about 20%. It's actually about 20.8 or 9 or something. I did the maths on this. So 20 to 21% is actually the end result. Now, these guys were getting 70 to 80% grades from me, right? Why? Because I'm marking individual elements. I'm marking the idea. I'm marking the execution of that in a script. So they were doing a great job. They were doing 80% across the board. So they were actually still getting the 80%. And I was giving them 80%. But the end product, if I was marking the end product, and if they were going to mark the end product, I'm getting 80%, but I don't really like this film very much. So this is one way of looking at why we can put in 80% but not get the result we think we should get. So when I share this with corporate and I share this with executive teams, is if your CEO brings 80% of her game, and then your executive team bring 80% of their game, and then your top line management bring 80% of their game, and then your middle line management bring 80% of their game, and then the staff bring 80% of their game, and then you outsource it after that, outsource some work, whatever it is, and they bring 80% of their game. And everyone thinks 80% is a really good amount of input. I don't mean just like in terms of effort. I'm talking about in everything, in diligence, professionalism, and effort, and time, and focus, and everything else. In life, it goes like this as well. If your health and fitness, for example, is 80%, you probably consider yourself pretty damn fit. The benchmark is, as long as you're relatively fit, that'll do, right? 80% would be pretty damn fit and healthy. But I'm telling you now, the rest of your life can only ever hit 80% of your maximum potential if your health and fitness is at 80%. Because you've only got so much energy, so much strength, so much health to be able to put into that. Does that make sense? And it goes on to maybe your relationships, and you give 80% to your relationships, and then you give 80% to your kids, and then your kids give 80% to their homework, and you wonder why your kids are coming in with 40%, and yet you're all giving 80%. So it's a harsh lesson, but it's something I go when I go into corporates, is to really try and get them. I start with the executive team, okay, and I get them to make this commitment to raise their game, and they strive for 100%, because even if you hit 97, 98%, by the time it goes through, you're still ending up with about a 90% output. Trust me, that puts you in one of the greatest organisations on the planet, right, if you're knocking out 90%. And if you're a human being and you're running at 90%, you're one of the most successful human beings that are going to be on this planet. Because most of us are down here, 20% or less. Now, you may be having this experience right now, or you may be excited right now, and then you're going to have this experience. And the experience I'm talking about is the wall of doubt. So some of you may already be thinking now that you're not sure that you're doubting what I'm saying. Maybe you're doubting yourself to be able to commit. Maybe you're doubting it applies to you because you're the only person in the whole world it doesn't apply to. At some point, doubt's going to hit you, okay? Because the nature of this thing is this: we have to do more to get more, put more in. But what happens is it doesn't go up like this. What happens is it's a bit like weight loss. If you go and start eating, if you're 16 stone and you start eating like a 12 stone guy, and you start exercising like a 12 stone guy, you're doing this much work, but you have to wait for this to kind of catch up. Does that make sense? Okay, and that's how this works. So we put this effort in, and then we have to wait for it to catch up. And obviously, when you put all that work in, it feels like hard work, and we're sitting there, and we're getting these little tiny results here. Something triggers in the brain, another chemical manipulation that says, "Oh my God, this is hard work. Why am I bothering?" And you stop. You come back to your comfort zone, and this will come back to where it was. Okay, all part of those cycles that I'm talking about. Okay, that emotional mindset stack that I showed you earlier. So you will hit the wall of doubt. And to give you an idea of the power of doubt, in the animal kingdom, I always use lions and zebras as an example, okay? So if you've ever seen a lion lying in wait, looking at a zebra, okay, salivating, everything else, there's a point that it goes. If you've seen it, it lies in wait and it's all pent up and all that adrenaline is firing off in its body and through its veins and everything else, okay? And it's there, pensive. And then suddenly it goes. And when it goes 100%. It doesn't give it a go, by the way, right? You're never going to see a lion have a go, all right? It's going to go or it's not going to go. And the reason that is because it has very small tolerances of certainty through evolution and through its own learning. So there's a very small tolerance of certainty. And what the world is doing, the world's coming in to its brain, and the brain is analysing this world. It's not thinking how we are, it's not problem solving how we do, but it's absorbing this pattern from the outside world, and then it's looking for the degree of certainty that's been pre-programmed in it and what it's learnt along its life. And once that degree of certainty is met, it's a chemical switch. All of that motivation, all that adrenaline gets dumped into its system and it goes 100%. And you know what? They're pretty accurate. Now, does it get it every single time? No. Sometimes it doesn't. But if it doesn't get it, it doesn't sit there and say, okay, I'm not a hunter and give up, right? Like we do. What it does is sit there and the brain just absorbs that information. It learns from it. Direct experience, okay? It learns from it. And it makes those tolerances even tighter next time so that it can almost guarantee a kill. Now, how zebras flaunt this, by the way, is they paint themselves in stripes and they collect themselves in groups, and that's enough to create enough doubt in the lion that it doesn't get that switch. Now, if it was thinking like us, if it has a problem-solving brain like we do, it could look at it and it would say, right, jump at the stripes. Jump at a head, jump at a butt, jump at something, you're going to get something there. But it doesn't work like that, because the subconscious brain in the lion, which is exactly the same by the way as the subconscious brain in us, is looking for the switch to turn. And it will not go until the switch is connected, the switch is made, and then the chemical dump happens, and then it will go. So if the zebras are lucky, the lion is in so much doubt that it just doesn't go at all. Or if it does go, it doesn't go with the same commitment that it would have had before, because there's that level of uncertainty in it and it's not quite sure what it's doing. So it cannot be as direct or specific as it maybe would want to be in an ideal world. A lot of the time it won't go at all. So how we overcome this is really simple, right? And I call it creating motivation, because ultimately, to take yourself where you are now to where you want to be and then beyond to your maximum potential, you know what? You're going to need a lot of motivation. Because when we're motivated, it's easy to take action. When we're unmotivated, it's really difficult to take action. People talk about things being hard work. It's only hard work if you're unmotivated. If you're motivated to go to the gym, it's easy. If you're unmotivated, it's hard. If you're unmotivated, moving from your couch to your fridge and back can consider like really hard work, right? But if you're motivated, you can go and run a marathon, and it's not considered that hard work, if that makes sense. So what we do here is anything you're looking to achieve in life, any kind of action you're looking to do, especially if it's something outside of your known, okay, something outside of what you've done in the past. So if you've raised your bar to a completely new level, there's going to be an amount of doubt. And in fact, the default setting for us is doubt. So anything new, you're going to have huge amounts of doubt. So what will happen is we'll have this degree of doubt. In this case, something completely new, probably 100% doubt. And then what we do is the brain then starts filling it up, like the chemical switch on the lion, and it will fill it up initially with our own certainty. Now, this is a completely new area for you, or you've pushed yourself beyond anything you've seen before. You're trying to push yourself beyond anything you've ever achieved before. You're only going to have an amount of certainty. You might only have 10%. I work with people that have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% certainty. I've given myself 50% certainty, so maybe I haven't pushed myself, quite as far as I could have done today, okay? So I'm giving myself 50% certainty that I can achieve this. There's 50% of me that says, yes, this is mine to have. On top of certainty, as human beings, we have belief. So belief is this inherent belief in that it's possible, okay? So this is possible for us. And you can increase possibility. Why? Because you have to look at the facts. You come and hear someone like me talking. You go and get yourself a coach. You read some books on brains. You go and meet some people who have already achieved what it is you want to achieve. And all that does is it starts to feed into you this degree of possibility that actually, you know what, you just might be able to have this as well. And that will top up the doubt as well. But even there, you're looking at what I've written about 10, 15% doubt at the top. That 10 or 15% doubt, I'm telling you now, is probably enough to put the brakes on altogether. It's certainly enough that your motivation is going to wane very, very quickly. You only need 1 or 2% of doubt to really start procrastinating and slow you down. And if you have 1% and you focus on it, it kind of grows in your field of vision. That makes any sense. It's still only 1%, but it's all you're focusing on. You're going to get a chemical reaction of doubt. Doubt is in there from the outside world. Why? Because it stops you making mistakes. It stops you dying. It stops you putting your energy into something that's not going to guarantee a result for your survival. And if you're raising your bar beyond anything you've ever raised it before, you are definitely going to be in the unknown. Therefore, it has to throw in doubt, because anything new could harm us according to it. So we have to become the boss of this, and we can put this great thing on top, which is trust. And it's a 5-letter word that should probably never come into corporate speak, right? That's what I keep getting told. However, it's probably the one thing that does need to come into corporate speak, because you have to have trust. You have to trust in yourself, trust in the goal you're setting, trust in what you're trying to achieve, trust you can have it. Trust that even if you don't achieve it, it's okay. Trust that even if it's the wrong thing, it's okay. Trust that if you achieve it, you're still going to be a great person. It's not going to change things. Does that make sense? And if we can top up that gap with trust, now we eradicate doubt. And if we don't have doubt, and all we've got is positive goals and positive emotional connections to what we're going for, now we're going to be massively motivated, and it'll be easier. And at any point when you hit that wall of doubt, you come back and you just have to refill your certainty, refill your belief, top it up with some trust, because I tell you now, if ever you lose motivation in life or anything feels like really hard work, it's going to be pure and simply because the brain is getting the input from the outside world, it's making its own judgment on this, and it's starting to perceive that the effort's not worth it, that you're not going to get what you think you're going to get. And that's when motivation wanes, procrastination starts, it's the killer of dreams, it's a destroyer of goals, and your job isn't to try and be out there saying, I must keep motivated. Your job is to keep doubt out. That's a completely different way of looking at it. That's the end of what I've got to say to you today. I just want to recap, because I've gone through quite a lot of information there with you today, and I just want to give you a really quick recap of what we've done today. We talked about possibility and potential. Possibility is learnt, it's what you put in place, and it's your own self-imposed limitations based on your experiences and everyone else's experiences that taught you. Potential is your inherent capacity, right? What you could achieve without any of these limitations. I think it's actually 100%, but, you know, for the geneticists out there, they say it's 85, 90% in most areas of your life. We learnt it through direct experience, witnessed experience, taught experience. I told you about my name, George Douglas Swift, a slip up from my dad, an appeasement to my nan, and something that no one thought they had a choice in. It creates this emotional mindset which just cycles through, creating equilibrium. That's all this is doing. It's trying to keep things the same. That's why creating change can be so hard. We're a puppet. You're just a chemical puppet. Dance this way, dance that way, go for this, don't go for that. And until we get involved and start pushing against the known, things are not going to change for us. They won't. We can keep wanting change, but until we start doing what we need to do, it's not going to work. And we came up with a really simple tool for that, which was this success ladder. And once you've worked this out, because cognitively, I tell you now, you already have most of the answers on what you need to do to get where you want to get to. It's the emotional response, the puppet that's holding you back. So once you identify where you want to be, now you just need to do what you've got to do. And we've got the rules in place, which the most important one of which was you have to accept those rules, accept what you've got to do, or change your outcome. You can't have it both ways. When you hit that wall of doubt, go back, reassess. How certain are you? How much belief do you have? How much trust do you have in this? Because that's where the doubt's going to be, and where the doubt is, that's where your motivation is going to get the plug pulled on it. I want to thank you. I hope this has been informative. I hope you can apply it. It really will change things for you when you start to view life differently, and that's the first step to doing things differently. So I want to thank you for your time. It's been a real pleasure, and I'll talk to you very soon. This is George Swift from Bigger, Brighter, Bolder, The Mindset for Success. If you want more information about myself, Bigger, Brighter, Bolder, or BBB Success Groups for Entrepreneurs, please go to www.biggerbrighterbolder.co.uk. And until next time, be successful.